when the first season it was Fraudiola. These players gave me the prestigious they have.
Do you know why as well? Because in 7 years I won 21 titles.
Brilliant Barcelona, Pep Guardiola's magnificent team.
This team cannot be stopped at the moment.
So it's 3 titles per year, playing that way.
Sit down! Nobody talk! Sit down!
And that is why City are champions, history makers.
I'm not good. I'm not good enough. I know that.
But you have to learn to play football with courage.
And all the people say the way you play is not be possible here in the Premier League. So, and I said myself, why not?
I'm genuinely so upset I'm having to make this video. In spite of all his achievements, some people genuinely think Pep Guardiola, one of the greatest football managers to have lived, is a fraud. He's an overrated manager. He's just a checkbook manager. His achievements aren't impressive. In fact, right now, before you watch this video, if you think Pep is a fraud, comment why you think that and reply to your own comment after watching the whole of this video. Because I guarantee you're going to change your mind. This is the Fraudiola myth debunked. We'll assess Pep chronologically and counter the criticisms as we go. And we can already bust one of the Pep myths by looking at the first team he managed. No, it isn't Barcelona. It's Barcelona B. Barca B is Barca's youth team, and you might be more familiar with the nickname La Masia, the famous academy which produced the likes of Xavi and Iniesta. Unlike in England where youth teams play in their own separate league, in Spain the teams are permitted to enter the main football pyramid up to the second division. And that means Pep's first professional managerial job was at Barca B. So what's the first myth we can bust? That Pep could never do it at a lesser team. That he's only managed strong teams. He's never proven himself at a non-elite club. Firstly, I find that a really weird critique. Pep manages elite teams because he's an elite manager. He's not an elite manager because he manages elite teams. The logic's just totally distorted, and it's not a legitimate failing of Pep because it doesn't work on any level. Managing an elite club doesn't inherently mean you'll succeed. There are plenty of examples of managers managing elite teams, but they fail. But also irrelevant because it's just not true. The season before Pep took over as Barca B manager in 2007, they finished 19th place in the 3rd tier of Spanish football, and they were relegated. Pep was in charge for 1 season whilst Barca B were in the 4th tier, and he led them to 1st in the league that year to qualify for the playoffs for the 3rd tier, which he also won. And now let's take a look at his time with Barcelona. In 4 seasons, he won 3 consecutive La Liga titles. He won the Copa del Rey twice, he won the Spanish Super Cup 3 times, and he won the UEFA Super Cup, Club World Cup, and Champions League twice. So that's 14 trophies in 4 seasons. He was also the youngest Champions League winning manager at the age of 37. He was the most successful manager in Barca's history. He was the first manager in Spanish football history to win the treble. He was the first manager in football history to do the sextuple in 2009. Domestic Cup, League title, Champions League, Domestic Super Cup, UEFA Super Cup, and Club World Cup. He won 9 of his 15 El Clasico matches. Even the most staunch Fraudiola myth believers surely don't think there's anything to critique about his time at Barca. Well, apparently he gets too much credit for his time at Barca as well. Pep was seemingly carried by his team, which was the best club side in history. If he didn't have Messi, he'd be nothing. He can't even win a Champions League without Messi. He's a fraud. And do you know what I say to that? Bollocks. It's objectively incorrect to say that Pep was carried by his team, that he walked into the easiest job in football, that he walked into the best team in the world. Just try to look at the landscape before Pep became Barca manager in 2008. Barca hadn't won La Liga for 2 seasons. Barca hadn't won the Champions League for 2 seasons. Barca hadn't won the Copa del Rey since 1998, the UEFA Super Cup since 1997, and they never won the Club World Cup. This isn't a case of, oh, what an ordeal, what a true rags to riches story. No, of course they weren't a shite team, but Pep did not walk into the best team in the world. He created the best team in the world. Barca finished 3rd in La Liga the season before Pep joined, 10 points off second place Villarreal, 18 points off league winners Real Madrid. His managerial predecessor, Frank Rijkaard, had a league win percentage of 58.9%, and Pep would go on to achieve a win percentage of 76.4%. Ronaldinho was only 28 and had won the Ballon d'Or 3 years prior. Deco was only 30 and came 2nd in the Ballon d'Or rankings 4 years prior. They collectively made 140 appearances in the 2 years preceding Pep's arrival at Barca. They were unbelievable players when Pep became Barca manager and could have easily played for another 3 to 5 years at the highest level. And do you know what Guardiola did? He took outrageous risks which could have easily backfired. He sold Ronaldinho and he sold Deco because he wanted a new look Barcelona, and he wanted to build a team around one man in particular, a 21-year-old Lionel Messi.
But it was so obvious that was the thing to do.
No, at the time that was seen as a huge risk. Of course, Messi was already an unbelievable talent, but he never played 30 league games in a season. His highest goal tally in all competitions up to that point was 17 in a season. He was a great player, obviously, but he was nowhere near the player he would become. And how did Messi become the player he did? Guardiola. In Pep's first season, after 2 years of failure, in addition to, winning the first treble in Spanish football history and the first sextuple in football history, Guardiola built his team around Messi. And Messi, with just an extra 11 appearances compared to the previous season, scored an additional 22 goals. Let's also consider the key players Pep brought in that season. The most notable outgoings were Ronaldinho and Deco, as we've discussed, sold for around 40 million euros. And the most notable incomings were PK from Manchester United and Dani Alves from Sevilla, a spend of around 45 million euros. And again, you may look at the PK signing and go, yeah, no-brainer, obviously he was going to succeed. Well, no, not really. He'd only made 12 league appearances in 4 seasons at United. He was a 21-year-old centre-half, and then Pep turned him into one of the world's best defenders, with PK playing in a majority of the league games in Pep's first season and starting the Champions League final against his former club. Even Dani Alves at Sevilla. Did anyone really expect him to go on and become, for many, myself included, the best right-back in football history? I don't think so. And let's bust another myth. Again, I've no idea how this myth started, but here we go. Guardiola doesn't promote youth and instead relies solely on signing big players. Right. Well, in his first season, he promoted Busquets and Pedro from Barca B. Pedro would go on to make over 300 appearances for Barca, playing in the forward line of the best club side in the world, and Busquets still plays for Barca to this day. He's made nearly 700 appearances, has never gone a season at Barca without making at least 40 appearances, and would go on to become the best defensive midfielder in history. But yeah, sure, Pep didn't promote youth at Barca, nor did he mould and improve young players. Apart from Messi, PK. Oh, and he promoted Thiago from Barca B, who'd go on to become a top player too. He also consistently improves players who aren't even necessarily young. Dani Alves, Xavi and Iniesta had their best seasons when they were in their mid and late 20s, under Pep. It's almost as if the reason Pep was successful at Barca was because of his excellent coaching abilities and managerial decision-making. He walked into a struggling and underperforming Barca team. He made tough and unforeseeable changes, letting excellent senior players go to make way for his own culture, his own ideology and tactics. He promoted youth from La Masia and turned them into world beaters. He transformed Messi into the greatest player in the world. Messi had his best season under Pep, scoring 73 goals in 11-12. He improved players no matter their age. He became Barca's most successful manager. He won 14 trophies in 4 seasons, including an unprecedented treble and sextuple. He became Barca's first manager to beat Real 4 times in a row. He was for a time the manager with the highest number of points in a season across the top 5 leagues, and he created the greatest club side in history by improving the players already at the club, promoting youth, and making astute signings. I'm not going to go into the full tactical principles of Pep's Barca because we could be here all day, but suffice to say, he revolutionized football with his style of play. No, it isn't tiki-taka, by the way, that's something else. Whether it was shocking the world by playing Messi as a false 9, or adding discipline and pressing to Barca's DNA, Guardiola was the reason why that Barca side was so good. It's frankly lazy to say Pep was handed everything at Barca, because it's not true. Hopefully that's extinguished any myths around his time at Barca. After a year-long sabbatical, Pep joined Bayern in 2013. Now, I don't think anyone has any critiques of Pep's domestic time with Bayern. It's more his European performances which people seem to have an issue with. But let's start with the domestic situation, because I think many people simply overlook it and assume Pep should be winning the league every single year with Bayern, so therefore any domestic achievements are irrelevant? Well, in the first instance, he did win the Bundesliga in each of the 3 seasons he was Bayern manager, and in 2 of those, he won the double. He also won the UEFA Super Cup and Club World Cup, so 7 trophies in 3 seasons, which isn't too bad for a managerial stint which was supposedly a failure. The Bundesliga is currently associated with having no competition. It's seen as a one-team league dominated by Bayern, and that's correct, because Bayern has won the last 10 league titles in a row. But before Guardiola joined Bayern, the club had never won 4 titles in a row in its history. Yes, Bayern had won the league the season before Pep joined, but in the preceding 2 seasons, Dortmund had won the title back-to-back. Whilst not as extreme as the situation he walked into at Barca, Pep did not walk into a Bayern side which was winning the league every single year. Pep was at the start of that run, and I'd actually argue he's one of the main reasons why they're still on that run. I don't think his domestic achievements should be overlooked. In his first season, he set records for number of matches remaining when the title was won, most points in the opening half of a season, most wins in a season, most consecutive wins in a season, longest undefeated streak, most goals scored away from home. Let's also consider the players he improved. He signed Thiago from Barca and made Thiago a consistent starter for Bayern by the time he left. He signed Kimmich when he was just 20 and made him another starter for Bayern. Thomas Muller had his most prolific season under Pep. Boateng and Alaba became 2 of the best defenders in the world. Guardiola taught Lahm how to play as a defensive midfielder and Javi Martinez how to play as a centre-half. So, he improved the team, he improved the players, he introduced a new style of football, and he won 3 titles in a row. But the main issue people have with Pep's time at Bayern is his failure to win the Champions League. Because Pep, whilst not walking into a team which won the league every year, as it does now, was walking into a club which had just won the treble. So that is why Pep's time at Bayern is fraudulent, because he failed to win the Champions League with Bayern. Well, first of all, that's ignoring what Pep achieved domestically. The players he improved, players he brought in, the style of football he introduced, beginning an era of league title dominance for Bayern, and more. But that is absolutely correct. He did fail to win the Champions League with a team which had got to the 2 previous finals. So, why did that happen? Well, let's take a look at the context of Bayern in those 3 seasons and the context of the matches themselves. Pep reached the semi-finals in every season at Bayern. Across those 3 years, the only other team to feature in every semi-final was Real Madrid. Bayern lost to the eventual winners in 2 of the 3 seasons, and in the only season they lost to the team which didn't win the final, that team only lost the final on penalties. So let's not pretend that Pep was losing games against minnows. They were very high-quality opposition sides. Now let's look at the games themselves. Starting with the 2014 exit, which was easily the worst, as Bayern lost 5-0 on aggregate to future European champions Real Madrid. This was obviously a very good Real side. They had prime Ronaldo, who'd won the Ballon d'Or the year prior and would win it again that year. Casillas, Ramos, Modric, Alonso, Benzema, Bale. There's no shame in getting knocked out by that side, nor is there an issue with losing to that side 1-0 at the Bernabeu, which is what happened. Especially when you control the game, dominate possession, you have more shots, you create more chances, you limit the opposition's chances, and frankly, you're the better side on the night. And to this day, I have no idea how Goetze didn't score an equaliser in the 85th minute. Pep can't legislate for his player missing a sitter like that, and I'm still amazed at this outrageous block by Alonso in the 92nd minute to deny Muller a certain goal. But there is an issue with losing 4-0 at home in the second leg. How can it go from the first leg performance to a 4-0 demolition? Why did Bayern play far worse at home than away? Why was the game at Real so controlled, but the game at home so chaotic and open? The answer is Guardiola, but not for the reason you might expect. Guardiola is to blame for that 4-0 defeat, but not because of his philosophy, or his tactics, or his game plan. The reason Guardiola is to blame is because he did something that night which he'd never done as a manager, and nor would he do it again. He compromised his principles and listened to how his team wanted to play, not how he thought best to play. Pep considers that as one of the biggest mistakes of his managerial career. The biggest fuck-up of my life as a coach is how Guardiola put it. After the 4-0 defeat, Lahm said it himself. Our formation was different and we weren't as good tactically. In the wake of the 1-0 defeat in Madrid, where Bayern had played the Guardiola way, controlling the game, having 70% of the ball, just to lose to a goal on the counter-attack against the run of play. the Bayern higher-ups, for whatever reason, decided to pipe up, with the then Bayern chairman stating that
70,000 of our supporters will be waiting for them. It will be hot enough for the trees to burn in Munich. What happened to them against Dortmund?
4-1 defeat in the previous season's semi-final
Will seem pleasant by comparison.
What a truly mad thing to say ahead of a second leg. Guardiola wanted to play that second leg exactly how he played the first leg, but just with more aggression in the final third. The key was to not be so overly aggressive so as to not expose Bayern to Real's deadly counter-attack. Control, patience, flooding the midfield was the key to prevent Real's counter-attacking threat. That was Pep's plan. But on the day of the game, after speaking with the most senior Bayern players, he decided to change his approach to the game plan the players wanted. The players wanted to, as their chairman put it, burn some trees and go for the jugular against Real, the attacking German way. And what that did was create a 4-2-4 formation on the night, leaving Bayern ridiculously exposed in the midfield, the exact opposite of what Pep had initially planned. It wasn't Pep's system, but the Bayern players' system. Now, does that exonerate Pep of any blame? Of course not. He should have stuck to his guns. But it is important to consider the context of that 5-0 defeat to Real. The following season, Pep's Bayern was knocked out by his former club, Barcelona. As with Real Madrid in 2014, there was no shame in losing to eventual champions Barcelona, a side which contained Dani Alves, Piqué, Mascherano, Alba, Busquets, Iniesta, Rakitic, and arguably the greatest front three in club football history, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. But once again, there was an issue with the scoreline. The tie ended 5-3 on aggregate, with the damage being done in the first leg, as Barca beat Bayern 3-0. Pep didn't help his cause by initially lining up Bayern in what has been described, by me anyway, as a suicidal formation, playing three at the back, going man for man against Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. But in fairness, Bayern didn't concede whilst they deployed that formation, so Pep's potential overthinking of playing that back three, going man for man, isn't really relevant. Even with the back four that Pep changed to in the second half, Barca were just the better side. But there were some pretty inexcusable defensive lapses in that game from so many Bayern players, particularly Benatia and Boateng at centre-half. It did take Barca until the 77th minute to score a goal, but then the Bayern defence capitulated, conceding again just 3 minutes later, and then the goal which all but ended the tie in injury time. Pep did get the tactics wrong initially, but he altered those tactics when the score was 0-0, only for his defence to drop clanger after clanger and concede 3 needless goals in 15 minutes. And Pep won the return leg 3-2, but the damage was done by his team's individual errors in the first leg. Being without Robben and Ribéry for either leg also couldn't have helped matters. If we're blaming any individual for that exit, I think you have to blame Benatia, not Guardiola. And then, in his final season, he lost to Atletico Madrid on away goals, a rule which has thankfully been abolished. As you'd expect against Simeone's Atletico, Pep's Bayern had 69% possession in both legs and absolutely dominated the chances and the shots. In the second leg especially, after losing 1-0 in Madrid, Bayern peppered Atletico all night long. I remember watching that game at the time and just not understanding how Bayern hadn't scored at least 5 goals that night. They had 34 attempts on Atletico's goal, and Muller even missed a crucial penalty when Bayern were 1-0 up, which would have given Bayern the lead on aggregate and the initiative to not have to go out and score another goal and risk being exposed on the counter-attack. But that's exactly what happened because of Muller's penalty miss, and whilst Lewandowski scored in the 74th minute and Bayern in fact won on the night, Atletico went through on away goals. For me, that was probably the best season for Pep to win the Champions League with Bayern, and it was because of a penalty miss that cost him a place in the final. So please tell me how Pep is to blame for Thomas Muller missing a penalty. Yes, Pep didn't win the Champions League with Bayern, but context matters. And that brings us to his time at Man City. He was joining an aging Man City side which hadn't won the Premier League in 2 years. They'd finished 4th that season, 15 points behind Leicester, only besting 5th place United on goal difference. The team wasn't bad by any means, of course. It contained De Bruyne, Sterling, Aguero, David Silva, company. But it was a team with an average fullback age of 32, and one of the highest average ages in the league at that moment in time. So unsurprisingly, Pep made a number of signings. He brought in Gundogan, Zinchenko, Jesus, John Stones, Leroy Sané, Nolito and Bravo in his first season, and then Bernardo, Edison, Walker, Danilo, Mendy and Laporte in his second season, whilst moving on 14 first-team players over those 2 seasons. And it worked. Guardiola did need a season to experience and understand the English game to identify which of his players were and weren't good enough to play his style of football, to bring in his own players, and for them to adapt to his style of play. But after just 1 season, Pep City produced arguably the most impressive Premier League season ever, breaking countless records and becoming the first ever Centurions in the Premier League. So far, Pep has won 4 Premier Leagues, twice as many as every other manager in the league combined, an FA Cup, 4 League Cups and 2 Community Shields. He also won the first ever domestic treble and has won 4 of the past 5 Premier League titles, a feat matched only by Fergie. No one can critique his domestic achievements with Man City. Surely, half of those titles were won by just 1 point against Klopp's Liverpool, one of the most highly rated teams in Premier League history. So it's not as if Pep has had it easy at City either in terms of competition. So why do people complain about Pep at City? Because apparently, he's a checkbook manager. He needed to spend big to turn City into the monsters they are today. Well, yeah, of course he did. Apart from an outlier like Leicester, every team that's won the Premier League has done so by spending vast amounts of money to win the title. The reason that critique doesn't work on any level is because it applies to literally every single Premier League winning manager. Fergie, for example, broke the British transfer record 5 times. By contrast, Pep's broken it once. Of course he spent a lot of money. He was walking into a team which needed investment, it needed refreshing, particularly in defence. It's so odd when people try to use the "he spends money" argument as a failing of Pep. Recruitment is arguably the most important and trickiest element of football. If it was as easy as spend big equals success, then Man United, a club which has spent the most of anyone since Fergie left, would have far more to show for its mass spending than 1 FA Cup, 1 League Cup, 2 Community Shields and 1 Europa League. It's almost as if recruitment involves an element of intelligence and difficulty. So yes, Pep has spent a lot of money at City, but he's also won a lot. I remember this season there was a really poor debate on Guardiola whether he's a checkbook manager or not, and essentially the argument was, well, Pep spent 3 times as much as Klopp, therefore he's a checkbook manager. Right? He's also won 4 times as many league titles as Klopp, and has actually managed to defend his Premier League title, unlike Klopp. The argument of Pep spent 3 times as much as Klopp, therefore Klopp is better than him, or that's therefore a failing of Pep, only works if Klopp's Liverpool has been the same level of Pep City. There's 1 league title for Klopp's Liverpool compared to 4 league titles for Pep City. That should tell you that's not the case. But Pep doesn't just buy ready-made players either. Every player which went on to become a first-team regular significantly improved under Pep. He somehow managed to improve Aguero when he was in his late 20s. He turned central midfielder Delph into the main left-back of the Centurions.
It's the basics of football.
He transformed central midfielder Zinchenko into a competent left-back. He coached a struggling Raheem Sterling into a PFA Player of the Year runner-up. He's made John Stones England's best centre-half. He managed to find another level to Kyle Walker's game. Kevin De Bruyne evolved into the best midfielder in the world. Basically, every single player under Pep at City has drastically improved their game. And over the past 2 seasons, City have won the title without a proper nominal striker. And yet, they've scored more goals than anyone. Almost as if Pep is an excellent coach, improves players, finds ingenious ways to win football matches. He's also promoted youth from the academy. Foden is now a regular starter and should go on to become one of England's most important players. Starts have also been handed to Cole Palmer and McAtee, who could go on to become first-teamers. And he's influenced the English game at all levels. When Pep first joined City, so many thought he'd fail, that his football wouldn't work in England. And now you can see Guardiola's mark in every division of the country. It suddenly became popular to play out from the back, to split the centre-halves of the goal kick, to dominate possession, to use the goalkeeper as a ball player. Teams are trying to play the Pep way from youth academies to non-league all the way up the football pyramid to the Premier League. You can't say that of any other manager to have managed in the Premier League. But the main criticism above all else is that Pep has never won the Champions League with City. He needs Messi to win the Champions League apparently. And that's a dumb argument, by the way. Does that also mean that Messi needs Iniesta to win a Champions League? Now, I am convinced that Pep will win a Champions League before he leaves City, but we can't judge what might happen. So as with his time at Bayern, let's look at the context of why City haven't won a Champions League under Pep, and whether Pep is a fraud and a failure because of that. His first exit was against Monaco in the round of 16. Now, that City side was never going to win the Champions League anyway, due to the problems that I've already discussed. But even in that game, they were unfortunate to go out on away goals, 6-all, to an exciting Monaco side which contained Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, Mendy, Fabinho, Lamar, Bakayoko, and more. The following season, the Centurions were knocked out by Liverpool. But the 5-1 aggregate scoreline didn't tell the whole story by any means. In the first leg, Liverpool's first goal was offside. City had an onside goal ruled out as offside. By the way, this was the season before VAR was introduced. In the return leg, and 3-0 down, City had scored early and had yet another goal incorrectly disallowed just before half-time. That would have made the game 3-2 before half-time, even after the odd officiating in the first leg. There's a huge difference between needing 1 or 2 goals in one half of football, and City's need to score twice in 45 minutes forced them to expose themselves at the back, and Liverpool capitalised on the counter, scoring twice and rounding off a very flattering 5-1 aggregate win. Whether City would have won but for those refereeing decisions, we'll never know. But it is fair to say that there were mitigating and unfortunate circumstances for City and Pep in 2018. It's hard to win a Champions League knockout round generally, never mind with 3 incorrect goal decisions going against you. Liverpool also weren't a bad side by any means. They did finish as runners-up and won the following season. The next year, it was another away goals exit and another exit to an English club, this time 4-all on aggregate. And yet again, there were unfortunate circumstances in this tie. Firstly, individual errors in the first leg. Pep got it right tactically. He played much more defensively than usual, knowing what had happened at Anfield the previous season, and was determined for history to not repeat itself. City ended up losing 1-0 at Spurs' new ground. Crucially, Aguero missed a penalty at 0-0, and Ederson should have done better with Son's goal. These are errors no manager can legislate against, and in the era of away goals, that penalty miss is even more important. Then, in the second leg, City won the game 4-3, but were cruelly denied by VAR, which arrived one season too late for City. Llorente scored a handball goal, something he admits to, and Sterling's winner was marginally offside. Again, margins, individual errors, unfortunate circumstances were the reason for City's exit, not Pep. Following season in 2020, well, that was just a weird year of football because of COVID-19, and that makes it even harder to dissect. City were once again knocked out in the quarters, this time in a one-off knockout match against Lyon 3-1. And that result was even more surprising considering how expertly City had dealt with Real Madrid in the previous round. I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but once again, City went out because of the players, not Pep. City had total control of that game from a tactical standpoint. Eric Garcia and Laporte played the worst game I've ever seen them play. Ederson made a mess of the third goal, which just put the nail in City's coffin. But surely the biggest offence was Sterling's outrageous and unforgivable point-blank miss of an open net in the 85th minute, when the score was 2-1. 2021 was the only season in which I will concede Pep got it wrong in the Champions League as City manager. And even then, the winning goal was because of a Zinchenko error. To this day, I don't understand the City lineup Pep went with in that final. Why didn't he play a holding midfielder? Both Rodri and Fernandinho were fit, they were on the bench. They weren't injured. Why did it take until the 64th minute for Pep to rectify that issue? Why did Zinchenko start over Cancelo? Why did Foden start in the centre of midfield when he'd been the most effective on the wing that season? I'm sure Pep had his reasons, but whatever they were, they didn't work. And that is the one season where I will accept that Pep failed his City players in the Champions League, not his players failing him. And that takes us to the most recent season. Thankfully, I was on a plane while City were knocked out by Real Madrid in the second leg, so I didn't have to deal with the heartbreak of watching the loss live. But I did watch the entirety of the first leg, have rewatched the game, and I've read plenty of analysis since then. Starting with the first leg, which City did win 4-3. The game should have been put beyond Real in the first half. City created chance after chance after chance, but just couldn't kill the game. There were poor errors from Fernandinho and Laporte, and that coupled with the poor finishing allowed Real to leave the Etihad with just a 1-goal deficit. And it also didn't help that both Walker and Cancelo were absent from the first leg due to suspension. Nevertheless, City were the better side in that first leg. Pep's tactics were fine. Had his forwards finished competently or made the right decision, one thinks of Mahrez failing to find a teammate on a number of occasions, or his defenders hadn't made stupid errors, City would have won the tie in the first leg. But even with that, City took the lead to Real Madrid. It was 5-3 on aggregate in the 89th minute, and somehow the City players found a way to capitulate. Some people criticised Pep's subs that night, but he did everything right. Walker, who was absolutely brilliant and shut down the dangerous Vinicius, had to be replaced by Zinchenko because of injury. De Bruyne came off for Gundogan, who created Mahrez's goal as he played a delicious ball to Bernardo, who found Mahrez. Grealish came on for Jesus with 12 minutes left, who really should have scored, but was denied by a goal line clearance and then an excellent save in the 87th minute. Pep even brought on Fernandinho with 5 minutes to go to shore up the defence, to run down the clock, and to put leadership and experience onto the pitch. Pep did everything he could, but his team still managed to let him down. You cannot fail to win a tie when you are 2 goals up in the 89th minute. That cannot happen no matter the opposition. You cannot capitulate. And yet they did. And a final individual error from Ruben Diaz giving away a penalty condemned Pep to another year of questions around his failure to win the Champions League since his time at Barca. It was a freak result. That's the only way I can describe it. Real didn't deserve to win, and yet they did. The stars aligned for them. Walker went off injured. Courtois made world-class saves. They cleared certain goals off the line. Despite scoring 5 goals, City were wasteful in front of goal and kept making uncharacteristic mistakes in defence. As a manager, if your team are 2 goals up in the 89th minute, you've done your job. The onus is on your team to see the match through. I don't buy the idea at all that City suffered from a weak mentality, as has been suggested by the likes of Patrice Evra, who really should shut up about football, by the way. Not only is that just nonsense based on what had come before that result, but also, a few weeks later, City made a remarkable comeback against Aston Villa to win the title. This had nothing to do with mentality or tactics or being beaten by the better side. This was another unfortunate result and nothing more. And that is the Fraudiola myth debunked. Pep is the greatest manager in the world. He improves players of all ages, promotes and integrates youth when he can, generally spends money well, has revolutionised football, and has dominated the Premier League to a level only bettered by Fergie. So far, at least. He's a manager who constantly innovates for the sake of it. His influence has been felt across borders and all levels of football. What other manager can say they've influenced the English game to the point where non-league players are trying to play the Guardiola way? Does he overthink? Does he overcomplicate? Sometimes, but nowhere near as much as his detractors would have you believe. He influences league football in whichever country he manages in. It's not a coincidence that the 2010 World Cup and 2014 World Cup teams contain players primarily from the teams he was managing at the time. In 2010 and 2012, Spain's lineup in the 2 finals contained 6 of Pep's Barca players, more than half of the entire team. In 2014, Germany's lineup in the final contained 6 of Pep's Bayern players. This is not a coincidence. When Pep was managing in Spain, Spain dominated international football. When Pep was managing in Germany, Germany won the World Cup. And now, Pep is managing in England. And England has reached a semi-final of a World Cup for the first time since 1990, and has reached the final of a major tournament for the first time since 1966. Whilst not as pronounced as Barca with Spain or Bayern with Germany, England's World Cup semi-finalists and Euros finalists did start 3 of Pep's City players, Walker, Stones and Sterling. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw those 3 again, alongside Phil Foden and potentially Jack Grealish, maybe even Phillips, starting for England and progressing deep into the tournament at World Cup 2022. Guardiola is a victim of his own success. He makes winning league titles look easy, so therefore it must be easy. What's interesting is the narrative before Pep joined City was that Pep's football would never work in England.
And all the people say the way you play is not be possible here in the Premier League, so... And I said to myself, why not?
Now the narrative is that winning 4 of the last 5 Premier Leagues isn't good enough. I haven't even gone into the ridiculous number of individual managerial awards Pep's won. but suffice to say, he's won a hell of a lot of managerial awards. What we must not do is allow one competition to determine whether someone is a great manager or player or not. It's frankly moronic to argue Guardiola isn't a brilliant manager because he hasn't won the Champions League since his time at Barca. Look at what he has won in that time. Look at what he's achieved. Look at what he's influenced. Look at who he's influenced. Look at his style of football. Look at the players he's improved. Yes, he spent money. Of course, he spent money. So has every other highly successful manager. You can't paint Guardiola with the checkbook manager brush without also marking the likes of Mourinho and Fergie and Ancelotti and Klopp as the same. And of course, Guardiola's ideas aren't entirely new. He's been influenced by the school of Johan Cruyff and others. But no manager has deployed those tactics or that philosophy as well as Pep Guardiola. He's managed elite sides, but they've rarely been the finished article. He's found a way to improve those sides, to take them to the next level. All of that and more is why Guardiola is in no way, shape, or form a fraud. He is, in fact, the best manager in the world, and if he continues to succeed, could go on to be regarded as the greatest manager in history. Thank you so much for watching this video. Really hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a long one, but hopefully you stuck with it. Hopefully you got something out of it and enjoyed it. And hopefully now you don't think Guardiola is a fraud if you did think that before this video. Huge shout out to my Noblets of Fire, Kante, not the Kante, but another Kante, and to my other Noblet of Fire, Frozone. If you would like to join our Patreon and support the channel, allow me to continue making videos like this, then do feel free to support. The link is in the description. You can join for as little as 5p a day. All proceeds from the Patreon go back into the channel. Hopefully you noticed our lovely new camera, for example. Have a lovely rest of your day, guys. I'll see you next time.